The Boys Who Challenged Hitler, Chapter 9, The Nibe Offensive. Early in May 1942, Bjorg decided on his own to try out a new recruit for the Churchill Club. Perhaps he had visions of starting his own club. His motive was never clear to the others. The candidate was a friend from Nibe, the small town outside of Aalborg where Bjorg lived. He gave this boy, who was only 13, a can of blue paint and told him to go paint the club's insignia, the swastika with arrows proclaiming the rebellion against the Nazis, all over town. But Nibe was a close-knit community in which everybody knew each other. Within minutes, the boy was in police custody, getting his ears boxed by an officer who warned him to forget his childish fantasies of revolution. The officer gave the boy a wire brush and a bucket of suds and ordered him to get busy removing the paint from all the walls he had defaced. As he scrubbed, the boy became angrier and angrier. By the time he was finished, he had conceived a plan. He told Bjorg of a remote German guard post, an armed tower in the sand dunes on the outskirts of town. It had a searchlight that swept back and forth for great distances to give the Germans a view out over the North Sea toward England. The post was manned by 3 German soldiers who lived together in a nearby barracks. The angry boy proposed to use the Churchill Club's weapons to kill the German soldiers. The Nibe Offensive, as he called it, would show the world who was a child and who meant business. Intrigued, Bjorg went to Aalborg to try the proposal out on the rest of the Churchill Club. Nud Peterson. When our anger at Bjorg for trying out a new recruit without telling us, "What were you thinking?" subsided, we coldly considered the proposal to shoot the German guards at Nibe. It wasn't the first time the club had mulled over a killing. Weeks before, another member had advocated stabbing a German guard in the back, but he was shouted down by others who said such an act would violate our code of fair play. An enemy must have a chance. On the one hand, this idea of Bjorg's was the same sort of thing, a sneak attack, and it also violated a second key club proposition, never kill for personal revenge. But on the other hand, the club's mission included a vow to minimize the Germans who had stolen our country. How could one minimize them more than by erasing them? Besides, now we had weapons. Were we ever going to use them, or did we just intend to let them rust in Helg's parsley garden and the monastery cellar until the British came to liberate us? The motion for the Nibe Offensive was raised, and the action was approved by the members. I helped Bjorg draw up an attack diagram, but I refused to go with him. I did not favor his mission. Besides, we had an action planned in Aalborg at the railway yard for the same evening, a military-style attack that would use our new weapons. I told Bjorg our strike was much more important than biking out to Nibe to quench some boy's bloodlust, but Bjorg had made his mind up. I didn't waste time trying to dissuade him. Bjorg later told Nud that he took off for Nibe with 2 companions, one the angry boy, and the other a Churchill Club regular who volunteered to go. They stopped at Helg's garden to pick up the machine gun and a pair of pistols, then continued on. The boys arrived at Nibe in the early afternoon. They stashed their weapons in a nearby Boy Scout hut and took a reconnaissance walk along the dunes in the late afternoon. They strolled up the hill toward the German barracks. Suddenly, the door kicked open from the inside and one of the German soldiers appeared, not in a crisp military uniform, but in shirt sleeves and suspenders, smoking his pipe. He was quickly joined by his mates. The 3 jolly soldiers saluted the kids, wished them a good afternoon, and waved them to come up. The group stood outside in the sunshine and had a cordial conversation. These guys clearly didn't get much company way out there, and they were happy to see the boys. They talked about their grandchildren back in Germany. It got harder and harder to view them as part of Hitler's deadly Wehrmacht. By the time he got back to the hut, Bjorg was deeply conflicted. Why kill these 3 grandfathers? Is that really the war he wanted to fight? But they were on a mission to take out these particular German guards. They'd been authorized to do it, and now they were duty-bound. A mission was a mission. When darkness fell, they carried their weapons to a drainage ditch at the bottom of a grassy hill below the German barracks. They spread out into 3 columns, Bjorg front and center with the machine gun and the other 2 flanking him with pistols. The plan was to crawl through the grass on their bellies up the hill. When they got close enough, they would pause. Then, on a time count, they would smash through the door and open fire. As they slithered through the wet grass, Bjorg tried to put himself in the mindset of a warrior. This was necessary, he reminded himself. This would show the Germans what April 9th was all about. This would wake up the docile Danes. He could see the newspaper headline, "Germans shot down with their own weapons by young boys." The light from a single candle inside the barracks danced with every step closer. 30 meters from the structure, there was still no sound. Bjorg's hands were trembling, and then suddenly the door opened. One of the old men came out on the porch and looked around. Had he heard something? The soldier stood for a while, then closed the door behind him, walked across the dune grass to the guard station, and climbed up the ladder to his listening post. Now the target was spread out. 2 Germans in one building, 1 in another. All 3 were above them. The boys' chances of mission success had just plummeted. Now it looked more like a suicide mission than a carefully conceived assault. Their thoughts swiftly turned from murder to escape. They lay motionless for what felt like hours, pressed down flat in the grass. They were wet, cold, and terrified. The German up in his listening post at the lighthouse surely had a rifle. After a time, they began to inch backward down through the grass, bodies cramped with tension. It took nearly a half hour to reach the ditch and longer to creep back to their hut. Once safely inside, the boys attacked one another verbally, each blaming the others for chickening out. Exhausted and humiliated, Bjorg stormed out of the hut and took off on his bike, leaving the others behind. He dreaded telling the rest of the Churchill Club of the Nybe offense's failure, but more than that, he hungered to be part of the night's activities in Aalborg. Bjorg sped 15 miles through the dark countryside, hoping to reach the Aalborg railway yard in time to take part in what promised to be the Churchill Club's biggest and most daring action yet.